Now, over the coming weeks and months, some countries will call for a ceasefire. And on the surface, that sounds sensible, attractive even. After all, who doesn't want warring parties to lay down their arms? Who doesn't want the killing to stop? But a ceasefire that simply freezes current lines in place and enables Putin to consolidate control over the territory he seized and then rest, rearm, and reattack, that is not a just and lasting peace. It's a Potemkin peace.
Now, before that moment when Blinken was going on and on about how could any small nation sleep well at night if Russia's invasion of Ukraine is not soundly defeated, unconditionally, World War II style, I have to admit, I thought back to this moment from a year ago and laughed.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway.
Well, there's your answer, Tony. Even after Bush caught himself, he whispered under his breath, Iraq too. Joining us now to discuss is Connor Freeman, an assistant editor for the Libertarian Institute. Connor, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, thank you very much, Kara. It's always a pleasure.
Great. So what do you make of Blinken mocking the very idea of peace talks?
I think it's what is to be expected from Antony Blinken. He's arguably the worst diplomat we've ever had. And calling him America's top diplomat is an insult to ourselves. It's hilarious to hear him talk about a Potemkin peace and to go on about, it may even sound sensible to stop this mass murder. It may even be attractive. But who wouldn't want that? And then he goes, but he leaves out the part where it's him that doesn't want peace. And we've known this. Blinken and Austin went to Kiev at the end of April last year. And then when they came back to Poland, Austin came out and said, yeah, the policy is to weaken Russia. And we know that they have sabotaged efforts at peace talks that the Israelis were enacting in very quickly after the war started. Now, former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett went to Moscow on March 5th of 2022 and received assurances from Putin that there would be no attempt at regime change or assassinating Zelensky, and that there would be, he would not even seek to demilitarize Ukraine. And what he wanted in exchange was a commitment for Ukrainian neutrality. And that was actually workable. But according to Bennett, the Americans and the British, particularly Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of England, and Joe Biden, sabotaged those efforts. And then they did the same thing when there were even more successful talks that took place in Istanbul, where an actual tentative settlement was essentially worked out. And they sabotaged that as well. That was Boris Johnson again. But right now, there's there's tons of countries that are trying to put a stop to this war. You have a delegation led by by African nations, including South Africa, Senegal, Uganda, the Congo. Egypt is also involved in that, as well as Uganda. And we know that the Chinese are trying to broker efforts. All these are being essentially rejected by the Americans and the Ukrainians because in order to have a ceasefire, what they're saying is that this will solidify Putin's gains. It would reward the aggressor and punish the victim. But the fact is, no one believes that Ukraine can retake these territories. We know this from the revelations in the Discord leaks. And we also know that the Ukrainian officials themselves are saying that, hey, forget about this counteroffensive. We need to focus on the next counteroffensive and the counteroffensive after that. Blinken, what he's saying basically is that they're going to triple down and quadruple down on this policy of making Ukraine a de facto NATO state. And he's talking about giving them a fleet of F-16s, modern combat aircraft, obviously the Abrams tanks and the other Western tanks that are going to Ukraine, the Leopards and the British Challengers. They're talking about, he says, an integrated air and missile defense system, which, as this article recently we covered this at the Libertarian Institute. My partner Kyle Anzalone did. And one of the things that Kyle noted on our show today, conflicts of interest, is that he's referring as well to the Aegis Ashore system. Now, this is Russia's worst nightmare. We have the Mk-41 so-called anti-ballistic missile systems, these Mk-41 launchers in Romania and Poland. These can fit Tomahawk cruise missiles tipped with hydrogen bombs.